The 2024 Township CX report found that 30% of respondents are open to digital verification methods, whether this is scanning a QR code to ensure that what you're buying in a Spaza shop is what the manufacturer has manufactured, sending a text message or SMS to receive notification, and checking a brand's social media pages to ensure that what they're buying is authentic. In our launch episode of the Township Marketing Podcast, or TMP, I'm joined by the co-founder of Vuleka, Brian Makwayiba, as well as Garth Fraser, a route to market manager at Tiger Brands. We discuss the impact of customer experience in the township market, where brands should listen and take data about what the customer is saying to a small store owner within the township market to manufacture and change their product in order to supply these markets. We also talk about the impact and value of digitization. We discuss how brands themselves need to consistently be engaging in these communities in order for them to not get left behind. Welcome to TMP. Enjoy the show, subscribe to this episode, and please share and hit subscribe. I'm your host, Mongezi Mtati. Garth and Brian, thanks so much for making the time to talk to us as our launch guests on the TMP podcast to kick off the new year. Just before we start, how has 2024 been from a township market perspective? Brian, I'll start with you.
So it's been, from our side, quite a lot of learnings. It's been different from the other years, if I'm being honest. Because there's been a lot of things that obviously have happened, but right now there's been also a huge opportunities because there's a lot that we've done within the space in 2024 that we didn't do previously.
And for you, Garth?
Yeah, perfect. First of all, thank you, Mongezi, for having us. I share Brian's sentiment. It's been an interesting year, but it has been a year of growth. It has been a year of learning. It has been a year of trying new things and understanding what works best. It's been the full package. I mean, there's never a dull moment. Never a dull moment.
Just sticking with you, Garth, there's a lot of debates about what the township economy is and isn't. As somebody who interacts a lot with this economy, what would you say the township economy is? How would you describe it?
Good question. Township economy for me, when I think about it, is vibrant. It is ever-changing. It is new. It is different. It challenges the status quo. It doesn't look like something, and the suggestion is that it doesn't work. I guess Brian will share the sentiment. It works. And what makes the township economy for me, is its people. It is diverse. It is open. It is not as close-minded as some pundits may suggest. A simple example, whenever I do travel and I'm in the trade, I try my very best at the end of the day, if it happens to be a Friday, we are not going for a lunch or a beverage of sorts, what we would deem to be formalized. I want to go and sit in the area that we're servicing. So I'll drop the car at the car wash, I walk across to the Chisanyama, and for the first few moments, I'll get some interesting stares like, what are you doing here? And then, after the first 10, 15 minutes, we're all a happy family. So the people is what makes the township economy for me.
And for you, Brian, how would you describe the township economy? What is it? Does it even exist? Should we even be using the term township economy?
I would want to jump on a bit on that because for me, when you say township economy, you're talking about a certain location or an area. And for me, it's not necessarily just that location or area. It is, if you take the way or what Garth has just said about the people there, it is people living regardless of what location or area they are in. If that type of environment or vibe is there, I would consider it as that economy because Shisanyamas exist.
Yeah.
in the CBD. They exist in areas that are not necessarily considered like a township.
Yeah.
So, like I would say, I definitely agree with what Garth has said regarding what the attributes of it are. I
Yeah.
think we should just remove the name of that because then it suggests that it's just in a certain location.
So, Brian, the 2024 CX report found that 30% of respondents are open to digital verification methods to authenticate products that they buy, whether through scanning a QR code or anything else. How would this help in the supply chain process to ensure that people get quality products in the township?
So the biggest thing or the biggest problem that we found is that people cannot necessarily track where products come from because there is a bit of a gap. Now, when we developed our platform luckily does that because we are able to track it from source, being manufacturer, all the way to warehouse, all the way to the shop that it goes into. Now, the fact that the people in the township, as well as the people that sell products to them, are willing to do it, I just believe that there isn't really there aren't mechanisms known for them to be able to essentially do it. People want quality food, and
Sure.
people want to receive that. Just because I'm in a certain area does not mean I want an inferior quality product. So
Absolutely.
if I know for a fact that I'm going to trust a brand and I'm going to trust the product that I'm getting, it needs to be quality and they'll be willing to actually do that. So that would help with the supply chain if their product recalls, if there's any type of problems
Yeah.
that a product has got, it's easy to track where it has gone to, and
Yeah.
then it's easier to get that product back.
Coming back to you, Garth, from a brand perspective, how does the township's access to digital platforms inform brand engagement and brand safety?
Yeah. So I think a good segue, and I want to try and answer the question, I guess, in two parts, right? Brian's 100% correct. Traceability is key. And so when we're speaking about the quality of product and the safety of product, traceability is first and foremost, right? As a business, as Tiger Brand, safety is something that we hold very high. It is a non-negotiable. The safety of our employees, the safety of our staff, and also the safety of our shoppers and consumers, is as important to us to make sure that everybody has access to. So first and foremost, I guess from a safety perspective, we are quite fortunate that how we go to the market, our route to market models is threefold. We have a direct distribution service, which is our bread business. We have strategic distributors that we leverage those relationships with, that they will buy from us and they will manage the execution distribution through them. And then we also have the wholesaler model that we sell into, and then we also have feet on the street that will pull that stock that's been sold into the wholesaler from Tiger Brands out into the the trader environment. And so to Brian's earlier point, we've got checks in place that we're able to sort of milestone that this is what was sold, this is where it was sold to, and that we are able to obviously ensure that the product that has left our factory, the product that was delivered to a DC or a warehouse, and that the product ultimately that has shown up in that trade environment, we are confident and comfortable to say that we are able to understand that it's good quality and it's Tiger Brands authentic products. There is obviously always elements. If there's a criminal element, I laugh when I say you have to give it to a criminally minded person. They are innovative. If they want to, they're going to do it, right? I mean, that for me, from a safety perspective, when we speak about digitization, right, or digital platforms, I allude to aforementioned, this is a vibrant economy. This is
Absolutely.
gone are the days where people are moving out of the spaces where they've lived. I mean, yes, there's movement,
Yeah.
but we are still going back on the weekends. And then we are not moving, we are staying, which means
Yes.
growth remains, right? And so, therefore, being tech savvy, being on the platforms, it's important. So, if they live and reside on Instagram, I'm going to show my age with the next social platform. If they live and reside on Facebook, we need to
Yeah.
be there. Snapchat, I
Yeah.
don't know what Snapchat's doing in South Africa at this point in time. TikTok, we have to be there.
Yeah.
And so people are engaging. But there's more than just digital platforms. There's the below the
Yes.
line, which I'm sure we'll touch a bit as we continue the conversation.
But now, from a customer's perspective, Garth, in terms of this verification and this brand safety part to ensure that the
Yeah.
product is safe, are there any mechanisms that, to your point, you think you've seen this vibrant community responding well to?
Yeah, 100%. And I think Brian touched on the point, right? You know, all our shoppers want access to quality products, brands that they can trust. And we're quite fortunate from our Tiger Brand stable. We are one South African proudly. We are fortunate to have brands with strong heritage, iconic status. I mean, I imagine the three of us on this call, we've grown up. I never in my wildest dreams thought that the Oros that I drank on a hot summer's day ice cold, I'd be a part of that route to market solution for the would be shopper, right? And so definitely there is an onboarding. We have personal relationships with our customers or our traders to understand the importance of safety and health. There's a lot of education that's required. And as I say, we are quite fortunate that where we have rolled out, we have physical feet on the street that are engaging the trading landscape and this continual conversation, the importance of safety around that. And so we also work with different bodies to make sure that we have processes in place to be able to manage this sensitive topic right now.
I'll come back to you, Brian. So, you are someone who works in the township market and engages with brands to ensure that quality products reach this market. Where would you say the break is? How do bad quality products, unknown brands, unsafe products end up on the streets, end up in the township market?
So I think this one is a bit simple. It's pricing. The reason why people would go for a competitor product or a product that is unknown is because of price.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the rand is very stretched, and consumers are trying to make the most out of what it is that they've got. So if a trader or someone says, "I've got an alternative to what you usually buy," it's the same, but it's half the price. A person will buy it just to try it, not necessarily knowing exactly what the problems or issues are with that product. So we can't necessarily fault the consumer because of the pricing. We can, however, I think put more onus on the traders and the people that put those products into like those shops
Yeah.
because obviously they're trying to make a quick buck. And I think that's where the onus actually needs to lie.
Yeah.
Can I weigh in? I'm so sorry. I know
Sure.
that you're the
No, it's
Absolutely.
fine.
interviewer.
Yeah.
This is it's very close to my heart conversation, and I agree that to an extent we need to hold, I guess, the trader accountable. But I think there's also an element of regulatory, right? We are also finding there's a lot of imports, to Brian's point, and some of they land here at ridiculous price points. And if the
Yeah.
rand is stretched, it kind of informs what I'm going to buy. Then there's also the conversation around regionalized, localized manufacturing that's taking place, right? And we don't necessarily know if they are following the same stringent sort of policies, for lack of a better word, that we all are held accountable to. And so I think with not over-regulating, there needs to be some regulation to be able to ensure if anybody is going to be manufacturing in this space that there's a set criteria that's being followed to ensure that the would-be shopper and consumer is buying a decent product. But if there's none of those checks and balances in place, then we do find, to Brian's point, price dictates, disposable income dictates what I'm going to buy.
Sure.
And if as a trader I can sell more of a product that the shopper is going to buy, I am going to make it available. So it has a sort of a knock-on effect, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a combination of also things fall off trucks. There's that element, right? And
Yeah.
this is sadly, it's almost an easier avenue to get rid of. And again, if there's no checks and balances, questions are not being asked or answered, and if traceability is not, then we're always going to have this pandemic, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Brian, just to come back to you a little bit about something that I recall you were calling for, I think, or you were finding around 2021, 2022, and this talks back to this idea of price sensitivity, this thing that you've just mentioned now. So around 2021, 2022, you were noticing that customers are looking for smaller and smaller packages, smaller and smaller packaging in the Spaza shop. And I think this to me relates back to this idea of if a store owner says, don't try this, try that, that also talks to this sort of influence. So there's this levers of
Yeah.
influence and this price sensitivity. How have you seen brands responding to these two things to ensure that the price sensitivity part is covered, but also the people who influence this decision at that very last mile are also engaged with? Have you seen any things happening within that environment?
So I think the biggest thing that we've seen happen is products coming in smaller packages
Yeah.
to to essentially um, be available to the consumer at the pricing that they can afford, and then also still keeping to the same quality. Um, I think one thing that we've been preaching for years is around incentivizing the store owner or the
Yeah.
person that has got the influence to actually be the person that sells the product,
Yeah.
because this is the person at the end of the day that is the last person that talks to your customer before the customer buys the product. We've seen, though, unfortunately, that a couple of brands don't really see that as the way to go and look more at bigger campaigns without localizing it and understanding that in this area, this is what the shop owner literally wants,
Yeah.
and then we can incentivize them. I mean, I'll give a simple example. Through our platform, we are able to see that, this guy has bought more of this product versus this. If we're trying
Yeah.
to push this product, how are we incentivizing him to essentially push the product? It's something as simple sometimes as, another discount on the product that would have been bought because now he's selling volumes,
Yeah.
or a discount on his full basket that
Yes.
includes other products, where a guy now feels like, if I buy from here and this product is in my basket, then I'm getting it cheaper this way, and at the end of the day, I'm making more money.
Garth, you mentioned the on the ground teams that you have, and I know that in the report this was also mentioned that as Tiger Brands you have on the ground teams ensuring product verification, ensuring that the quality is right. What have you seen as some of the issues in ensuring that what you manufactured is what ends up in stores, and how have you tried to resolve some of the challenges where they arise?
Good question, and I guess part of the burning conversation is going around presently, right? We've been very fortunate in that we haven't, to the extent of, had the issues. The biggest challenge that we have found is expiry dates, and because of how the route to market model and the value chain works, is the trader is not going to want to lose the money that they've invested. And so short-sighted, they will leave it on shelf. And so part of what we do as part of the checks and balances is the service that we provide is more than just a sales function. The service that we provide is around execution, is about making sure that pricing is called out so when the shopper walks in they can engage, is to make sure that the product is clean and it's presentable, is to make sure that stock rotation happens so that we can make sure that the oldest, for lack of a better word, the closer to the best before is sold out first, before obviously sort of the later dates. So we have this on a daily basis. And if we need to make sure that for the sake of safety, that we will swap stock in and out to make sure that any shopper that walks into any store that we are servicing, that they can be confident that the product that they buy one is safe.
Yeah.
Our biggest challenge is around on one particular category on counterfeit. And so we have processes in place. We have certain watch-outs to look for from a branding perspective on the package itself, on the nutritious information. Does it look the same? Is the pack size the same? Is it a 400, 410, or 425? And we know what our pack sizes are. And if anything is deemed to be suspicious, we'll pick it up off the shelf. We'll bring it back for testing, and if it's found to be a counterfeit product, we then have the process of we have our internal inspectors, if you will, or investigators that will go and obviously have the necessary conversations, to Brian's earlier point, to understand the traceability of where this product has come from.
I imagine, though, Garth, that is tough at formal retail, where you know the numbers of stores and the number of shopping malls that retailers are in or supermarkets are in. It must be much harder in the informal economy. How do you ensure that traceability is done where there are so many stores in so many areas? Or are there some problem areas that you know that these tend to be problem areas and you pay more attention to those? How do you balance that?
So again, good question, but it's a combination of, right? So you'll remember me saying that we go to the market threefold. The second and the third part of that conversation is we have distributors. So we know what volume against what batch number was sold to. And again, we are able to then trace. We are fortunate to have relationships with our distributors because they themselves, as a part of the agreement, is they must be able to have a structure of sort that can trace back. So if we've given the instruction that we have found to be, we are able to leverage that relationship. We are able to leverage relationships with execution partners like a VUCA on our wholesale model, where they are able to physically, we can see what was sold into what wholesaler. So that's where we do the checks and balances first. We are able to see where that wholesaler has sold to. And so we're able to trace back. And because at the point of sell on last mile, we are able to see where that trader has bought from, whether it's from the wholesaler or from the midi wholesaler. But to your point, I'm making it sound quite easy in the conversation that we are having. But the actual execution thereof, it's interesting.
So social media and word of mouth really influence the township shopper experience. This is something that we are finding year on year as we do the research. Coming to you, Brian, have you seen any good examples of how the brands that you supply use social media to engage with communities? I would imagine that makes your life easier, especially when there's a new product being launched. And you mentioned product testing earlier, you mentioned alternatives. Are the brands doing a good job? Are you seeing some examples of social media use to make that last mile and that sale easier?
If there's something that I can think about off the top of my head, was something that Tiger Brands did actually with the Albany bread and the young girl that got that in the rural areas, because that touched people's hearts and people connected more to that. And we saw already a shift when that happened because people wanted to be part of that story. So it wasn't necessarily it wasn't something that was forced like on people in terms of the social media. It grew and it had a life of its own, and then that built the brand loyalty. So I think in terms of social media, especially for brands, it needs to be something that people can make a part of their lives. This is, advertising to you or at you, where you end up knowing or seeing that this is an ad. And, at the end of the day, I can get this one from this one, this one from this one. And then, it's an ad at the end of the day. However, if it speaks to you as a consumer, like the way it spoke to people during the whole thing with Albany, then people will naturally gravitate towards it. So that's at the top of my mind is what I can think about.
Sticking with that particular example, what do you almost see immediate shifts if something happens organically like that on social media? Do you almost see the shift immediately in terms of what store owners call for in their next sort of batch of stock that comes through? Like, do these sort of social media conversations that reach the township market influence almost immediately what store
Yes.
owners want on shelves?
Yeah, so speaking specifically of that example, we just saw an immediate uptake where because our platform is product agnostic, so we
Yeah.
see different brands and different products, and we can see and can tell what happened after a certain situation. Immediately after that, because consumers were demanding more of that brand, the shop owners or our customers then obviously demanded a bit more as well. And I
Yeah.
think with something like that, it would have been easier as well to carry that along, like further on, and that would
Yeah.
have kept the momentum essentially going.
Yeah. Garth, I'll come to you, starting with something sort of anecdotal, I suppose, on my part. What
Yeah.
I realize is that if I'm in, you know, a leafy suburb somewhere, I'm targeted a lot by brands on social media. But if I'm
Yeah.
somewhere, if I'm in a township, I'm targeted far less. It's like the same brands almost don't see me the same way as the same consumer. So, as such, most brands rely on traditional media to engage with the township community. What's your view from being
Yeah.
on the ground on how communities engage with brands, both social or sort of digital media as well as
Yeah.
out of home or traditional media?
Yeah, spot on. I think just before I respond, I just wanted to make a correction on the example in the Albany. It wasn't something that Albany did. It was a dad walking with his daughter, and he took a picture and he posted it.
Yeah,
Fortunately, I guess, she was holding an Albany loaf. But I
yeah,
guess to Brian's point, the impact and the strength of social media, it just blew up altogether. But just from a correction, it wasn't something that as a business that we had initiated as
yeah,
a campaign of some sort. Coming back to the question, you know, I think I think I'm gonna answer twofold, right? So I guess from a social media platform, engagement with our would-be shoppers out there, the different platforms that we know of, I think they touch the entire market. I think Brian was right earlier when he was saying, the fact that we do call it township, we kind of box it.
yeah,
When in principle, townships show up differently. Townships show up as leafy neighborhoods, or
yeah,
do you know what I mean? And so for me, the different platforms will touch across, whether it be a township, for lack of a better word, environment, or a leafy suburb, right? But then when we're speaking about the below the line, sorry, how do we approach this? And I think more than anything now, in this journey that we've been on, we've understood, we've always known this, right? But we are intentional right now through understanding that this space that we speak of is as important, if not more important, right? And if a large percentage of South Africa resides in the space, it is
sure,
important that we bring the proverbial mountain to Muhammad, right?
yeah,
And so we should be speaking with them. And so what we are certainly doing more of, and in with certain campaigns that we do, we are one engaging the regionalized approach when we're speaking about radio. You remain top of mind, you remain talkable, right? The execution of point of sale within the areas that we do, so we remain visible and top of mind. Over and above some of the conversations that we're having right now, and you would have seen in the print, right, is about Spaza branding.
yes,
Um, and Spaza branding is a dual role, right? Is we are taking the billboard on the highway, and we are taking to where the mass is living and residing right now. And so we have this opportunity to partner with traders, where their stores become billboards, for lack of a
yes,
better word, right?
yeah,
And so, high traffic areas, top of mind. And what is interesting is the market that we are servicing, they don't really know Tiger Brands, you know?
sure,
they know Koo, they know Doom, they know Jays, they know Oros, they know Cross and Blackwell. And so those are the images that we put on that it resonates with our shoppers, right? And we're finding that our stores are becoming selfie walls, and
Sure.
that's becoming a way that they're promoting the brand, right?
Yeah.
But more than that is we want to leverage this sort of traditional approach and we want to unpack it and make it, for lack of a better word, informal or
Yeah.
abstract, right? By partnering with would-be partners from a shopper perspective, traders in the space. But then I remember as a youngster growing up, when it came to this time of the year in December, you
Yeah.
got the smell of fresh paint and you knew that the year was good.
Yeah.
And so for me, we want to make sure that all our shoppers have an experience.
Sure.
The type of store that they walk into, it is pleasing to the eye from an aesthetic. As a kid in our home, when we were busy painting and having the carpets and standing on them and putting them on the roof to dry outside, this is what the trader wants to present to his shoppers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we, through partnering with the traders, able to give, using these platforms, our shopping experience, because what we are seeing in the formal space, we are bringing to what is deemed to be an informal market. So we merchandise the stores, we do category management where we can, and so we all can have an experience in this space. It's just, so I can go on forever on this topic. So my
Yeah,
apologies.
yeah. So there's a bit of a challenge, right? Garth, while sticking with this, and I'll come to you with the same question as well, Brian. So there's a bit of a challenge. So when we started, when we launched the report in 2021, to the point that you're making, that the shops were becoming billboards, and that had always been the case. I mean, I grew up seeing
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
I grew up seeing that most of the stores were branded with some or other big brand that
Yeah.
I would have known growing up, right? But what we started realizing in 2021, 2022, and this had been happening prior to our realization, by the way,
Yeah.
is that there are younger and younger people owning a lot of these stores. And as they become younger and younger, they also become a little bit more professional in their approach to business, a
Yeah.
little bit more
Yeah.
professional in their approach to branding. So much so that today versus 20 years ago, when you walk in the township, you would see less prominent branding, for lack of a better word, around shops, and you are now seeing a lot more custom branding, where
Yeah.
people are being conscious even of the fridge that carries the
Yeah.
cool drink is not
Yeah.
branded. How how are you finding ways of either collaborating with that, leveraging that culture, or at least finding ways of partnering with these, I would call them more sophisticated young
Sure.
business people who are
Sure.
running
Sure.
these
Sure.
spaces?
Yeah, yeah. I think Brian mentioned it earlier, right? Is what they are doing is to digitize the whole value chain,
Yeah.
right? And so with the evolution that we are seeing, as you point out, right, it is important that we grow with it. That we go with the flow, that we understand what works and what doesn't work, right? And again, I want to come back to this point that what is the experience that the shopper who would never experience one of the more prominent formal environments, right? And this shop that I walk out of my front door, across the road, and into Dubai, what is the experience that I'm getting?
Yeah.
And so for me, in the spirit of digitizing, we are partnering with I guess companies and the traders who want to digitize and give their shopper an experience. So is it around a POS system? Is it around the layout of the store? is around point of sale being placed strategically within the category in terms of how it is managed. If that particular store doesn't want a branded approach in terms of a cooler,
Yeah,
we then understand how do we work with them,
sure.
how do we have the conversations that they can understand the benefits of having the likes of a branded cooler, right? Because
Right.
as shoppers, we also resonate with certain brands. And we were talking about influencing and influencers, right? The role of the trader, the role of the influencer on social media platforms. How do we ensure that the conversation is happening through the line? Do you know
Exactly.
what I mean?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so for me, at Tiger Brands, we believe in inclusivity.
Yeah.
And that's how I like to approach the market is, are we ensuring that the market that we are servicing, it's an inclusive conversation, that we are touching all spectrums or sides of the graph or the pyramid or whatever it is, the house that you want to call it, right? But we're able to engage with them. And so some don't want to, and we
Yeah.
need to be respectful of those decisions.
Yes.
And then others are very open to the idea because, as you say, they are tech savvy, they are
Yeah.
different in the way of thinking. So how do we partner with them? I think the important thing is how do we help them achieve what it is that they need to achieve is the ultimate thing, and through it all,
Yeah, as opposed to imposing what you want to achieve. Yeah, no, I get
100%,
that absolutely. And I think I
100%.
also get the sense of collaboration. Brian, you've been at this for a long time. Same question to you. What have you seen as the biggest trend in this store owners, especially Spaza shop owners? I want to go there specifically because that's where I'm
Yeah.
seeing the trend a lot more. And cafes and fast food shops as well. That's kind of where I'm seeing this trend growing more and more. What have you seen over the past couple of years? I mean, you've been at this for a long time. So let's say for the past 10 years, what have you been seeing as the biggest shift in how younger and younger people running stores, branding themselves, creating the experience, changing how the brands they carry, what they sell, and how they engage with communities has been?
Like the biggest thing that we've seen is the fact that there is more, and I don't want to necessarily say pride, but there is
Yeah,
more this is my shop type
yeah,
of thing. So with that and with younger people, they're not they're not just takers. They're not just taking whatever the brand is giving. They are more in tune with what the customer wants. So we've found as well that we are getting requests for products that maybe we didn't have or didn't stock. And the person will tell you, but that's what my customer wants.
yeah,
Usually or previously what would happen is that products will be put into the store and said, and the shop owner will be told to just move it or try and move it or this.
right, right. So
The new
there's a
younger,
big focus on customer experience.
yes, yes.
Right. Okay.
And also in the way that they're doing business. So with the digitization aspect, we are finding that more orders are coming through our platform than what we had previously, where we had the agents on the ground going out to go take the orders. A lot of those guys are now more tech savvy, then it's easier for them to do that. But another big thing that I think I touched on already before is the incentivizing piece. So we are getting a lot more pushback or questions on, okay, fine, you want me to move this, what's in it for me?
Yes.
What do I get? How does that help my business versus here's 100 rand, here's this, please do this type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
There We find that more the younger people that are owning the shops are also looking at it a bit more long term. I
Sure.
mean, another part of our business is around giving credit to those guys. And we're seeing that there's no defaults because they
Sure.
understand the longer term value of keeping that type of relationship. We've brought in, or we partnered up with government for a couple of programs to actually help these guys, for the shop owners to be more sustainable. And we've
Yes.
seen that a lot of the shop owners, especially the younger ones, are now at levels where they now want to grow the shop or they've outgrown where we thought they were, which is beautiful to actually see.
Yeah. I think on that customer experience piece, I want to almost stick with that a little bit because I think that's something that's taken for granted quite a lot, especially by brands. How are brands responding to that customer experience piece, to what the customer is calling for versus what happens at a much bigger sort of brand level? I think I'll start with you, Brian, because you're sort of in the middle, right? You see both sides. What are you seeing in terms of how that customer experience piece influences what gets manufactured, I suppose the sizing of products, the experimentation of different products, because what we keep finding time and time again, once again, is someone will buy a smaller packet of this brand of maize meal, this brand of cool drink, this brand of chips at Spaza shop level, and then month end, weekend, or whenever they go buy groceries, they buy the bigger packet because I've tried this and it really works. How does the customer experience piece influence manufacturing, influence brands, influence what you then get from a supply chain perspective?
So I think I'll go back again to the type of data and insights that are collected through a platform like ours. So a lot of the brands that we've dealt with or we deal with will want to get verifiable data. If we tell them people want a 250-gram versus a 500-gram, show me why and which people are those, and that type of thing. So it's taken us years, like you said, to build a platform that can gather those insights and that data, and we can give it verifiable. Previously, it would have been a he said, she said. And, corporate is saying, no, we're not going to go to the 250 because it doesn't make sense. It's too expensive. It's too this. And then they wouldn't do it and then miss the boat there. Now we're seeing a shift or a change because we can provide that verifiable data to say, this is the people that are on the platform. This is what they're requesting. This is what they want. So now it makes sense for a brand to actually change. I mean, most of the bigger brands are big, so it's not easy for them to just change overnight. But then we are seeing like a bit of change. The smaller guys will change like this because they understand that if this is the demand, then let me give the customer what the customer wants.
Coming back to you, Garth, you're more than welcome to add your input on that before I ask you the next question. What are your thoughts?
Did you see me? I was ready.
I can sense it. I sense the fire.
It's quite interesting, right? And if you've not done the right research, and Brian's 100% right, I will offer something that I think, because it's what the rest of the market is asking for. But to your point, right, for the most part, the shopper mission in this sort of trader Spaza environment is a top-up. It is on the go, right? I need something to see me through. And so price pack architecture becomes critically important. We know which packs are take me home packs. We know which packs are for immediate consumption to feed a need right now. I never understood in my previous life. I used to sell carbonated soft drinks. And I could never understand why there's a 1 liter, a 1.5 liter, a 2 liter, a 2.25 liter. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, guys, surely this doesn't make sense. Why will I pay 12 Rand for 1 liter and I've got a 2 liter for 15 Rand? It just doesn't make sense, right?
Yes.
And then I learned and understood that it's about the consumption. I don't want a 2 liter. I can have a 1 liter, Brian and I, each a glass or whatever, and we are done. That's all we want. That's all we need. So we're going to buy that. But if it's
you'll find it very difficult to have a drink with Brian because I've been trying. So
well, maybe I'm helping you through this podcast. But I think if you drink straight after this.
Why are you listening to our secrets?
Yeah.
And so then I understood that, okay, the bigger pack is for, because it's in PET, and if you only have two glasses, you're going to end up wasting your investment, right? So it
Yeah.
becomes a family sharing occasion. So in the same way, in this environment, right, if we are not available in the different pack formats, then potentially one, we miss the opportunity, but also two, we're not answering the question. And here's the
Yeah.
thing, right? A smaller pack size is not always necessarily more affordable, but the absolute price point is lower than the bigger. And this is
Yeah.
what I can afford now.
Sure. Sure.
So it's about choice,
Yeah.
right? And you were saying it, right? In my world, a shopper, it's about the shopper experience, right? Is that that shopper has the choice.
Yeah.
And this is such a vibrant space and environment, right? That shopper also understands that the bigger pack is value for money. It's going to last me longer
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
hey, if I buy a tub of something, Ingrams, my whole family can use it. I don't have to buy the small
Sure.
size,
Yeah.
right? I'm going to have to buy many small packs, which is going to be more expensive. So they also understand. But there's this whole topic of disposable income. And
Yes.
so if we are able to meet the shopper at his or her place, the need, what the mission is, they have the right of choice. And that's the beauty of this journey that we are on
Yeah.
is I love the fact that I have this massive opportunity to make sure that every shopper is able to engage with the Tiger Brands product in as many as possible stores that are out there because we've grown up with this. It's a part of our makeup.
Yeah.
I cracked a joke in one other interview that I had. Oros, Nachi. We cannot.
Yeah. I remember. I
Do you know what
remember
I mean?
those talking
And every time
bottles.
we
Yeah.
hear
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
brings a smile to
Yeah.
the face.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of learning. Say we learn every day. It is sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not so much fun, but we learn how do we become more consumer centric, and how do we make sure that we give the shopper what it is that they want. And Brian's right. If I don't have an offering in the basket, then as a manufacturer, what am I doing about it to make sure that we're answering the question?
So, as people look ahead to 2025 and beyond, Brian, what has been the key learning about the township market for you in the past year? I know that you've been in the industry for a long time, but how has the past year changed your outlook in a way that it will influence how you do business in this environment in future?
So the one big thing has been the openness to adoption of digitization. We used to have a lot of pushback, but I think there also was not the right communication to the consumer as well as the consumer's consumer about why it's so important to essentially use digital platforms and
Yeah.
what that does for them. I think a lot of it was more around use this platform, and then that's it. But what does it do for you, and what can it do for you?
Yeah.
I mean, there is a small type. I think the last interview that we did, I touched on it. There's a loyalty program type thing that we have been running,
Yeah.
where through the platform we are able to say we can now see how many of this that you have bought, and we'll
Yeah.
reward you for it or
Sure.
incentivize you for it. We
Yeah.
are getting these people essentially asking us to say, "Hey, I think I've reached that number now. Hey, where's my this?
Yeah.
Where's my that?" You know,
Yeah.
versus which this is something that we didn't see before. So
Yeah.
I think there's an openness to saying, let's do business differently. There is a huge resilience factor with everything that happened previously, but there's also an outlook of growing this business and not necessarily looking at it as a hand to mouth type business, where people are
Yeah.
looking for solutions to say, in the next 5, 10, 15 years, this is where my shop is going to be. And it's reminiscent a bit of the general dealer days,
Yeah.
where the business could go from dad to son to
Yeah.
grandson, and that's sort of coming back in a
I
way.
see. Garth, you spoke a lot about the things that you have learned, what you've realized, but what has been the biggest realization for you over the past year in 2024? in how people in townships interact and engage with brands? And how has that changed your outlook looking ahead to 2025 and beyond?
People don't want to exist, they want to live.
Yeah.
And they understand that in order for them to live, they need to do.
Yeah.
And we spoke about how vibrant the spaces that we engage with on a daily basis. And if I walk down any street, Tembisa is where it really started for us as a kickoff. And you don't have to go anywhere. I can have my hair cut, I can have my clothes tailored, I can buy a meal on the go, I can buy a basket of something, I can have my car serviced, I can have my exhaust fixed, I can buy bricks for the building that I'm doing at home, you know? And for me is, how do we as manufacturers, how do we play our part?
Yeah.
Now, statistics says that unemployment rate is skyrocketing, right? But there's so much happening on the street, on the pavement, on the corner, in the container, and it's how do we play our part to help grow from an entrepreneurial perspective. I always get tongue-tied with that word. I hope I got it right. How do we help grow? How do we support, right? That for me is the big opportunity. Yes, my biggest mandate from a business perspective is to make sure that my availability is up there across the categories, that I'm in as many stores as possible, that I'm finding the shortest possible route to get there. But more than that, right, is how do we play our part? So the feet on the street that you reference, we employ from the communities that we service. So we give back. We've just started a learnership program for both able bodies as well as people with disabilities. So it's an 18-month program. How do we make sure that they are employable? Hopefully foot tiger brands at the end of it. And if that's not the case, that they are employable. So VUCA will phone us and say, hey, how much you got there? Make a plan. You know what I mean? And that for me is the exciting thing. Is yes, there's a growth agenda, but there's a bigger growth agenda about people. And that for me is what was a really a paradigm, I guess, shift for me in terms of the engagement, when I'm in there, when I speak with, the pride that I see a hawker has for that fruit and veg table that I'm trying to buy the banana from. And so it's about the people for me.
So it's about the people. And I think the other part that I'm getting is also it's about sustainability on both sides.
For sure.
Sustainability within the community and the sustainability of the brands themselves that come into this community. Now, in closing, Brian, I'll start with you. Why should brands and marketers improve how they engage with township markets, since no two townships are the same? Why should they care, and why should they improve?
So I think simply, most of their products are consumed there.
Yeah.
So if most of your products are consumed in a certain area, those are the people that you need to be concentrating on. And you mentioned the leafy suburb before, but
Yeah.
when someone is advertising to you or telling you about a product, when you are in that type of place,
Environment.
you
Yeah.
can decide yes or no, or
Yeah.
there is an alternative. Now, if this is a space where you are saying most of my products are going in here, but I'm actually not giving preference to that person can then change their mind and go to a competitor.
True.
So I think it's literally as simple as that. It's the power of numbers. So this is exactly where most products are consumed, and that's why preference needs to be given to them.
Now, same question to you, Garth. Why should brands and marketers improve how they engage with township markets? Again, you made this point, and I think Brian made this point. No two townships are the same. But why should they make improvements?
Well, simple. If they don't, they're going to be left behind. If they are not present, they're going to be left behind. If they are not engaging, they're going to be forgotten. And segmentation, what improves the conversation, right? Why it needs to be improved, right? And I think Brian kind of touched on it, right? One for me is if they don't change how they approach, and I speak as Tiger Brands, we'll get left behind because the market out there and the opportunity, the business for growth is bigger than. And so we can either choose to be a part of the evolution, we can be a part of the growth conversation, or we could be left behind. Or we could not have the conversation and run the risk of being left behind. I think this is an amazing and it's exciting time. There's some challenges that the market is busy going through right now. But yeah, we have to change how we engage. And the bulk of South Africa lives there. So if we don't speak to them, if we don't grow with them, then we run the risk of being forgotten. And no one wants to be forgotten.
Garth and Brian, thank you so much for the time and for the truly invaluable insights. It was an amazing conversation. I think a number of things to take away from that, but one of the ones that keep coming up is the customer experience, focusing on the customer and understanding the customer and being present within their spaces. And also I think the digitization part is also a big one, and finding ways of listening beyond the data that you get or the data that brands would usually use. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having it. It was awesome.
Thank you for having us.